Many of us have come to know Ashok Vajpeyi as a Kabir scholar and a biographer of Kumar Gandharv in Shabnam Virmani's documentary Koi Sunta Hai. Then we learned that he is also a renowned Hindi poet with more than 13 published books of poetry, the author of a book on the masters of Indian classical music that has itself become a classic, the translator of the works of major Polish poets, the founding vice-chancellor of the Mahatma Gandhi Hindi International University, an art critic and a friend and an early and ardent supporter of the contemporary painters of the progressive artist group, M.F. Hussain, Syed, Haider, Raza, and Francis Newton Souza. All this during an illustrious career in the Indian Administrative Service from which he has now retired. And then we read last month that he had spoken out in support of Dr. Binayak Sen. He was in the San Francisco Bay Area recently to attend an academic conference when he found time to speak with us. You participated in the protest against the conviction of Dr. Binayak Sen and in support of him in Jantar Mantar last month, January. What got you interested in the case against Dr. Binayak Sen?
You see, I happen to belong to Chhattisgarh in a manner of speaking. I was born there and had served there as an IS officer, so I happen to be aware of the levels of poverty and exploitation that do exist there. So I became interested in his work, which I heard from people who knew that here was a doctor who was doing something for the poor people. And then I was astounded to find one day that there were charges of sedition against him and he has been held up. In fact, I was to go to Raipur to protest against that, but I fell ill, so I couldn't go. And later, of course, the whole thing became quite weird in some ways. And when we learned of the conviction by this court, I have been a sort of magistrate myself. I have had occasion to sit with judgment on issues and sifting the evidence and all that. So quite obviously, the judgment does not seem to have taken into account all the facts and seem to have imagined many things. The charges are flimsy, they are very poorly supported by some credible evidence, and a man has been charged with that and given a life sentence. So this is outrageous. So we, a group of creative people, in fact, there were people from, as you know, cinema and visual arts and theatre, me from literature, and we protested. And it reminded me of my earlier days when there was this genocide in Gujarat. And I was the vice-chancellor of a central university, Mahatma Gandhi Hindi University, and I was again outraged by what has happened and the failure of the state, both at the central level and the state level. So I organized meetings of protest of writers, artists, painters, dancers, musicians. And we walked in protest asking for the dismissal of the then Narendra Modi government for its failure, and went to the president and gave them a petition, etc. We also went to the Supreme Court in a petition, but nothing came of it anyway. So I think it's important for writers and people who are in the public domain to raise their voice as civil society against such atrocities which are being committed in the name of law. What was also very disturbing was that a legal system should find a person like him worthy of conviction. I mean, that a legal system in this country is influenced by social norms and by political economy and all that is understandable. But that a legal system which seems in some cases to be the only hope should succumb to these kinds of either popular pressure or state pressure or take a view which is not supported was very, very disturbing. So there was another reason, not merely that what one may agree or disagree with Binayak Sen's approach, but that is not the point. The point is that in a democratic polity, people have a right, People have right to demand uh, justice be done to them. People have right to demand that they be given necessary opportunities to grow, to progress, etc. This is a legitimate demand. And just because you support that demand doesn't make you somebody who's working against the state. After all, we have a whole freedom struggle which is working against the state, the then state. And we have any number of, after all, the opposition parties do keep on opposing the state, and there are several other groups, but none of them can be charged with sedition just because you happen to, much as I dislike or not support violence of any kind. As a free-thinking person, I would think that there might be occasions when violence may be justified. And in any case, if there are people who believe in violence, they have a right to that belief. That they do not transgress limits of law or rule of law or commit atrocities in the name of violence, etc., is perfectly, understandable. And you can prevent them from doing that violence, and you can charge them up. In case of Binayak Sen, I think there is no such evidence that he had either actively supported or had done anything towards a violent revolution against the state, which imaginably is the charge. Now, I can't see how can this be allowed. And therefore, yes, of course, the legal process has started, and the High Court, we understand, has rejected the bail application. So now things are going up to. But I must put it on record, as you know already perhaps, that the creative and thinking community of the country has been outraged by this, by the fact that in the name of sedition, or in the name of imagined violence, or in the name of uprising against the state, you could be punished. Now, that is a position which is not acceptable.
You have been a civil servant, among other things. You've had an illustrious career. You were earlier the vice-chancellor of the university that you mentioned, the Mahatma Gandhi Hindi International University. Now you head the Lalit Kala Academy. You have also been a poet. You have written poetry yourself. You are a world-renowned scholar on the work of Kabir. You are an art historian. So your life has spanned many sides of the creative life in India. Do you see any connection between, say, the work of Kabir and the contemporary events in India, and what lessons we could draw?
You see, if you were to find a kind of relevance of Kabir in our time, it would be in two or three things. One, speak truth to power. Kabir did not care that his critique, both of the Brahmin ritualistic religion and the ritualistic practices of Islam, he spoke openly, and he criticized them without bothering about consequences. And he had to suffer consequences, but here was a person who spoke truth to power. That the power was both state power and religious power is of course obvious. So there is one. The job of a poet or an intellectual or any person involved in any creative pursuit has to speak truth to power. One. Two, I think it should be able to see clearly that by keeping silent, you might be promoting suppression. You might be supporting violation of the true spirit of law. So you must speak. That to keep silent can be an opportunism of a certain kind. It could be cowardice of another kind. It could be not willing to enter into controversy. Now that all these justifications for silence are not adequate and not defensible. Thirdly, in people like Kabir, you have a situation in which you are not doing it for yourself. You have no axe to grind. You have no stake personal in the matter. I think people like Binayak Sen have no personal stake. They are not looking for encomiums, they are not looking for approbation or approval. They're doing it, as far as I know, they're doing it for the betterment of the conditions of living, of healthcare and such like, of ordinary people. And if that could be interpreted by the state machinery or the judicial system as sedition, this is not something that we should keep quiet about.
Thank you very much.